It was a cold January morning in 1948 when 16-year-old Douglas Moore arrived at the Baker Hotel for his shift. The teenager had worked as an elevator operator for months, and like most young men his age, he had a playful streak that sometimes got the better of him. On this particular day, Douglas met his friend near the service elevator, and the two began horsing around, jumping in and out of the moving elevator car as a game. It was reckless, yes, but they were young, and the thrill of danger felt distant, almost imaginary. Then came the moment that would echo through the hotel's halls for decades to come. Douglas jumped, but his timing was off. His body didn't clear the threshold. His friend grabbed his legs, trying desperately to pull him free, but the elevator continued its slow, mechanical ascent. The force was unstoppable. The boy's screams filled the shaft, then went silent. When workers finally reached him, they found something that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. Douglas Moore had been cut in two at the waist by the crushing weight of the elevator car meeting the floor above. A newspaper article from that year confirmed the tragedy. But what the papers didn't report, what they couldn't possibly know, was that Douglas Moore never truly left the Baker Hotel. To this day, visitors and restoration workers report seeing the upper half of a young man in a 1940s bellhop uniform floating through the basement corridors near the elevator shaft where he drew his last breath. His apparition moves silently, sometimes passing through walls, forever trapped in the moment before everything went wrong. But Douglas is far from the only soul who never checked out of the Baker Hotel. This 14-story monument to ambition, tragedy, and the desperate human search for healing has witnessed at least 29 documented deaths within its walls. Some came seeking miracle cures in its famous mineral waters. Others came chasing dreams of wealth and glamour. And a few, according to local legend, came to meet a much darker fate. Their stories remain embedded in the very stones of this crumbling palace, waiting to be told. The discovery of crazy water. To understand why the Baker Hotel exists at all, we must travel back to 1877, when a family named Lynch left the town of Denison, Texas, with 9 children and 50 head of livestock. James Alvis Lynch and his wife Armanda were suffering from terrible rheumatism, a constant aching in their joints that made every day a struggle. They headed west, hoping the drier climate might bring relief. When news of Comanche attacks reached them, they decided to settle in a quiet valley tucked among the hills of Palo Pinto County. It was Christmas Eve, and though the land was beautiful, it was also isolated. The nearest water source, the Brazos River, lay 4 miles away. For 3 years, the Lynch family hauled water from that distant river, a back-breaking daily chore that consumed precious hours. Then, in the summer of 1880, a traveling well driller named Providence came through the county. James Lynch saw his opportunity. He traded a pair of oxen for the man to drill a well on his property, hoping for clean, fresh water that would end his family's struggle. What came up from the earth was anything but ordinary. The water had a strange, almost unpleasant taste, mineral-rich and slightly bitter. The Lynch family grew worried. Perhaps the water was poisonous. Perhaps the well had struck something toxic deep underground. Cautiously, they decided to test it on their livestock first. The animals drank deeply and showed no ill effects. Eventually, one of the Lynch sons gathered the courage to taste it himself. He didn't get sick. He didn't die. In fact, within weeks, something remarkable began to happen. Armanda Lynch, who had suffered from crippling rheumatism for years, noticed her symptoms beginning to fade. The constant pain in her joints subsided. The stiffness that had made every morning a trial began to ease. Word traveled fast in that part of Texas, and neighbors started appearing at the Lynch property, curious about this funny-tasting water that seemed to heal the sick. By 1881, James Lynch had strangers camped on his land by the thousands, filling their cups for 5 cents a glass. The well produced only about 100 gallons per day, forcing Lynch to have visitors sign declarations affirming they were actually sick before he would allow them to drink. He laid out a town on his property, naming himself the first mayor. They called the settlement Mineral Wells, and its reputation was just beginning to grow. The Crazy Well. In 1885, a man named Billy Wiggins drilled another well nearby, and this one would give birth to one of the most famous brand names in Texas history. According to local legend, an elderly woman suffering from dementia began drinking from Wiggins' well twice daily. Day after day, she returned, filling her cup with the mineral-laden water and drinking deeply. Within weeks, people began to notice something extraordinary. The old woman, who had been confused and lost in her own mind, seemed to be returning to herself. Her thoughts cleared. Her speech improved. She recognized family members she hadn't known for years. Whether the story is entirely true or somewhat embellished by time, the effect was undeniable. People began calling it the Crazy Well, and the water became known as Crazy Water. Modern testing has revealed that the mineral springs around mineral wells contain trace amounts of lithium, a substance now used to treat certain mental health conditions. Perhaps there was something to those old stories after all. By 1910, Mineral Wells was shipping over 3 million bottles of its healing waters across the entire South. The town had transformed from a dusty frontier settlement into a nationally recognized health spa destination. Hotels and bathhouses sprang up to accommodate the flood of visitors who arrived by train, by wagon, by any means possible, desperate to drink their way to health. Some came with arthritis, others with kidney problems, still others with ailments that doctors in faraway cities had declared hopeless. They came believing in miracles, and for some, miracles seemed to happen. But as the town grew, so did competition. Entrepreneurs from outside the area began buying up wells and building hotels, funneling profits away from the local community that had discovered the waters in the first place. By the early 1920s, many citizens of Mineral Wells felt they were losing control of their own miracle. The birth of an empire. In 1922, a group of local businessmen decided to fight back. They raised $150,000 from over 200 local shareholders, an enormous sum for a small Texas town, with a single ambitious goal: to build the grandest hotel in the region, owned entirely by the people of Mineral Wells. They needed someone with the expertise to make their dream a reality, someone who knew how to create spaces of extraordinary luxury. They found Theodore Brasher Baker. T.B. Baker, as he was commonly known, had already earned a reputation as one of the most successful hotel entrepreneurs in all of Texas. He had designed and built the elegant Baker Hotel in Dallas and the renowned Hotel Texas in Fort Worth. He knew how to attract wealthy guests and keep them coming back. When the citizens of Mineral Wells approached him with their vision, he saw an opportunity unlike any other. Baker hired architect Wyatt C. Hedrick, who based his design on the famous Arlington Hotel in Hot Springs, Arkansas, another town that had built its fortune on healing waters. But Baker and Hedrick didn't want to simply copy what had come before. They wanted to create something that would stand as a monument to human ambition, a building so grand that people would travel from across the country just to see it. Construction began in 1926, but it didn't proceed smoothly. Partway through the project, T.B. Baker traveled to California on business. There, for the first time in his life, he saw a hotel with a swimming pool. The concept captivated him. A pool filled with the healing mineral waters of mineral wells would be irresistible to guests seeking both luxury and treatment. He immediately ordered construction halted while the plans were redesigned. The delay added time and cost to the project, but Baker didn't care. He wanted perfection. An Olympic-sized pool was added to the front of the hotel, making the Baker the first hotel in all of Texas to offer such an amenity. The pool would be filled with the same mineral-rich water that had made the town famous, allowing guests to soak their bodies while surrounded by the elegance of a world-class resort. The grand opening. 3 years after construction began, at a cost of $1.2 million, roughly $22 million in today's money, the Baker Hotel finally opened its doors. The date was November 9th, 1929. A grand celebration gala followed 2 weeks later, on November 22nd. The timing could not have been worse. Just days before the doors swung open, the stock market had crashed, sending the American economy into a devastating spiral that would become the Great Depression. But somehow, impossibly, the Baker Hotel thrived. While businesses across the country shuttered their windows and families lost everything they had, the wealthy continued to flock to mineral wells. Perhaps it was the promise of healing during uncertain times. Perhaps the very rich simply had enough money to weather the storm while still indulging their desires. Whatever the reason, the Baker Hotel entered its golden age just as the rest of America entered its darkest hour. The building itself was a marvel of modern engineering and architectural beauty. Rising 14 stories above the small town of Mineral Wells, it was the first skyscraper ever built outside a major metropolitan area. The Spanish colonial revival style gave it an exotic, almost Mediterranean appearance, with ornate details and elegant facades that seemed to transport visitors to another world. County historian John Winters would later describe it as a Spanish colonial revival commercial high-rise, a unique blend of styles that captured both the romance of old Europe and the ambition of the new American century. Inside, the Baker offered luxuries that most Americans had never experienced. An advanced hydraulic system circulated ice water to all 450 guest rooms, an unheard-of comfort in the scorching Texas summers. The lighting and ceiling fans were controlled by the door locks themselves, automatically shutting off when guests left and turning on when they returned. A technology so advanced, it seemed almost magical. Valet compartments built into the doors allowed guests to leave their soiled clothing for cleaning without ever interacting with staff, preserving their privacy and dignity. The hotel featured 2 grand ballrooms, an in-house beauty shop, a bowling alley, a gymnasium, tennis courts, and an entire floor dedicated to mineral baths and therapeutic treatments. The famous Brazos Club occupied prime space within the building, offering exclusive membership to the social elite. And towering over it all was the Cloud Room, a spectacular ballroom on the 12th floor where guests could dance among the stars while gazing out over the Texas plains below. The Age of Stars. Throughout the 1930s, the Baker Hotel became a magnet for the rich and famous. They arrived in gleaming automobiles and private train cars, seeking the healing waters and the luxurious escape from ordinary life. The guest list read like a who's who of American celebrity and power. Clark Gable, the king of Hollywood himself, checked into the Baker during breaks from filming. Judy Garland, fresh from her triumph in The Wizard of Oz, sought rest and rejuvenation within its elegant rooms. Lawrence Welk brought his orchestra to perform in the ballrooms, filling the air with big band sounds that echoed through the corridors. The Three Stooges caused their particular brand of mayhem while taking the waters. Will Rogers, the beloved actor and humorist, visited the town so often that locals hung a banner reading, "Welcome to Mineral Wells," where America drinks its way to health specifically for his arrivals. Politicians came too, seeking both the healing waters and the favorable coverage that might come from T.B. Baker's influential connections. A young Lyndon B. Johnson, decades before he would become president, stayed at the Baker. The hotel hosted Texas Republican Party conventions in 1952 and 1955, and the Texas Democratic Party held their convention there in 1954. In an era of fierce political division, the Baker Hotel welcomed all parties, concerned only with the color of their money and the prestige of their names. Perhaps the most dangerous guests to ever sign the register were the infamous outlaws Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow. Local historians maintain that the notorious bank robbers spent at least one night at the Baker during their crime spree across the Southwest. According to legend, Bonnie and Clyde requested that the carpet outside their room be removed entirely. Why? So they could hear the footsteps of approaching police officers on the bare floor. Whether the story is true or merely the stuff of Texas tall tales, it captures the wild spirit of an era when the Baker Hotel stood at the intersection of glamour and danger. The woman on the 7th floor. But beneath the glittering surface of the Baker's golden age, darker stories were beginning to take shape. The most famous and most tragic involves a woman known only as Virginia Brown. According to hotel staff who worked during those years, Virginia was a striking woman with red hair and piercing green eyes. She lived in a luxurious suite on the 7th floor, paying nothing for her accommodations. The reason for this arrangement was simple. Virginia was the mistress of Earl Baker, T.B. Baker's nephew, who had taken over management of the hotel. Earl Baker lived with his family on the 10th floor, but he regularly visited Virginia's suite on the 7th. The arrangement was an open secret among the staff, who knew better than to gossip about their employer's personal life. Virginia had everything a woman of that era could want: beautiful clothes, fine jewelry, her own private space in one of the most elegant hotels in Texas. But she didn't have the one thing that might have made her happy. She didn't have Earl's name. The exact date of what happened next remains unclear, lost in the fog of decades and deliberately hushed conversations. What we know is this. One evening, Virginia Brown stepped to the window of her 7th floor suite and looked out over the Texas landscape she had come to know so well. Then, in an act of final desperation, she stepped through that window and fell to the ground below. Some say the affair had become too much for her to bear. The constant hiding, the knowledge that she would never be more than a secret. Others whisper about darker possibilities, about arguments and broken promises and doors that wouldn't open. Whatever drove Virginia to that window, her ending marked the beginning of the Baker Hotel's haunted legacy. The Lady in White, as she has come to be known, is now considered the most restless spirit within the hotel's walls. Visitors report catching the scent of lavender perfume drifting through empty corridors, the same fragrance Virginia was known to wear. Hotel maids have discovered broken glass scattered across rooms on the 7th floor, stained with the same shade of red lipstick her ghost has been seen wearing. The distinctive click of high heels echoes through the lobby at night, though no living woman walks there. Some who have encountered her describe feeling a gentle touch on their shoulders or arms, a flirtatious poke from beyond the grave. She seems particularly drawn to male visitors, as if searching eternally for the love that eluded her in life. Her room, the suite on the southeast corner of the 7th floor, remains the most haunted location in the entire building. Tour guides report dramatic temperature drops, electrical disturbances, and an overwhelming sense of sadness that seems to seep from the very walls. The architecture of ambition. Walking through the Baker Hotel during its golden years was like stepping into a dream. The architects and designers had spared no expense in creating an atmosphere of overwhelming luxury that would impress even the most jaded travelers. The main lobby soared upward, its high ceilings adorned with intricate plasterwork that caught the light from massive chandeliers. The floor was laid with tiles imported from Europe, their geometric patterns drawing the eye toward the grand staircase that swept upward in elegant curves. Every surface seemed designed to remind visitors that they had arrived somewhere extraordinary, a place where ordinary rules did not apply. The guest rooms themselves represented the cutting edge of hotel design for their era. Each of the 450 rooms featured private bathrooms, still something of a luxury in 1929. The furniture was solid and well-crafted, the linens imported from the finest mills. Windows looked out over the Texas landscape, framing views that stretched for miles across the rolling hills of Palo Pinto County. But it was the technological innovations that truly set the Baker apart from its competitors. The ice water delivery system alone was a marvel of engineering. A central cooling plant chilled thousands of gallons of water, which was then circulated through dedicated pipes to every room in the building. Guests could turn a tap at any hour and receive cool, refreshing mineral water without ever leaving their rooms. In the sweltering Texas summers, this amenity alone was worth the price of admission. The automatic lighting system was equally impressive. When guests locked their doors upon leaving, the lights and ceiling fans would shut off automatically, conserving energy and ensuring that rooms never overheated while empty. When they returned and unlocked their doors, everything sprang back to life. It seems simple by modern standards, but in 1929, it was almost magical. The valet doors represented another innovation in guest privacy. Small compartments built into the room doors allowed guests to deposit soiled clothing without ever interacting with hotel staff. A maid would collect the items from the hallway side, have them cleaned and pressed, and return them through the same compartment. Guests could maintain their dignity and privacy while still enjoying the services of a full staff. The mineral bath floor occupied an entire level of the hotel, offering treatments that ranged from simple soaks to elaborate therapeutic regimens. Private rooms allowed guests to bathe in the heated mineral waters while receiving massages or other treatments. Attendants monitored water temperatures and mineral content, ensuring that each guest received the optimal experience. Doctors maintained offices within the hotel, ready to prescribe specific water treatments for whatever ailments guests brought with them. The Olympic-sized pool remained the crown jewel of the outdoor amenities. Filled with mineral water pumped directly from the springs below, it offered guests the opportunity to swim in the same healing waters that had made mineral wells famous. Poolside cabanas provided shade and privacy, while servers circulated with drinks and light refreshments. On warm summer evenings, the pool area became the social heart of the hotel, a place where deals were made, romances kindled, and friendships forged under the Texas stars. The ballrooms on the upper floors offered spaces for every type of gathering. The cloud room on the 12th floor was the most spectacular, its floor-to-ceiling windows providing panoramic views that made dancers feel as though they were floating among the clouds themselves. Smaller function rooms could be configured for business meetings, wedding receptions, or private parties. The hotel maintained a full staff of event coordinators, caterers, and service personnel ready to execute any vision a guest might imagine. Throughout the building, art and decoration reflected the Spanish colonial revival style that architect Wyatt C. Hedrick had chosen. Wrought iron railings twisted in elaborate patterns. Tile work displayed vibrant colors and intricate designs. Wooden beams, exposed in many of the public spaces, spoke to a romanticized vision of the Old West, filtered through European sensibilities. The overall effect was of a place that existed outside of time, where the harsh realities of Depression-era America could be temporarily forgotten. This was the Baker Hotel at its peak, a monument to human ambition and the belief that enough money and imagination could create paradise on earth. But like all paradises, it contained within it the seeds of its own decline. The decline begins. By the late 1930s, the world that had created the Baker Hotel was beginning to change. Scientific advances brought new treatments for the ailments that had once sent thousands rushing to mineral wells. Antibiotics could cure infections that mineral water never touched. Modern medicine offered explanations and solutions that made the healing springs seem quaint, even superstitious. The desperate hope that had driven visitors to drink their way to health began to fade. The Baker might have declined then, might have faded into obscurity like so many other health resorts across America. But history had other plans. In October of 1940, Camp Walters opened just northeast of Mineral Wells. It would become the largest infantry replacement center in the entire United States during World War II, processing thousands upon thousands of soldiers preparing to ship overseas. The permanent and temporary population of Mineral Wells swelled to nearly 30,000, and suddenly the Baker Hotel was filled to capacity again, not with celebrities and oil barons, but with young men in uniform and the families who came to see them before they left for war. Throughout the war years, the Baker served as a home away from home for soldiers who knew they might never see home again. Its ballrooms hosted dances where nervous young men tried to find courage in the arms of local girls. Its dining rooms fed families spending their last precious hours together. The healing waters still flowed, but now they offered comfort of a different kind, a brief escape from the horrors unfolding across Europe and the Pacific. When the war ended in 1945, Camp Walters closed, and the Baker Hotel faced an uncertain future once more. The soldiers went home, the families stopped coming, and the town of Mineral Wells began its long, slow decline. A smaller revival came in 1951 when the camp reopened as Fort Walters, a helicopter training base, but it was nothing like the glory days, the deaths that stayed. Throughout its decades of operation, the Baker Hotel witnessed numerous deaths within its walls. Some were natural, the inevitable endings of elderly guests who had come seeking cures that would never arrive. Others were accidents, like young Douglas Moore's terrible fate in the elevator shaft. And some, according to local legend, were far more deliberate. Restoration manager Mark Rawlings has confirmed that at least 29 deaths were reported within the hotel during its years of operation. Many of those who died had come seeking miracle cures for terminal illnesses. They arrived desperate, having been told by doctors that nothing could be done, and they drank the mineral water with faith that bordered on religious fervor. When the waters failed to heal them, when their bodies finally surrendered to the diseases that had driven them to Mineral Wells in the first place, they passed away in rooms that still echo with their final hopes. One particularly poignant story involves a young boy who died around 1933 from leukemia while seeking treatment from the mineral springs. Visitors and paranormal investigators have reported seeing his small figure peeking around doorways and hallway corners throughout the hotel. He is often accompanied by the apparition of a shaggy dog, a faithful companion who apparently followed his young master beyond the veil of death. Local mediums claim that this child has made efforts to communicate with them, asking for help in moving on. Unlike many of the spirits that haunt the Baker, this boy seems confused about his situation, unable to understand why he remains trapped in these empty corridors. His story represents perhaps the greatest tragedy of the mineral water era. The children who were brought to mineral wells by desperate parents, only to find that hope alone cannot cure disease. The end of an era. By the 1950s, it had become clear that the Baker Hotel's glory days were over. T.B. Baker retired in 1952, leaving the property to his nephew Earl, the same man whose secret affair with Virginia Brown had ended in such tragedy. Earl continued to operate the hotel, but the numbers told a grim story. Fewer guests arrived each year. The healing waters had lost their mystique. Modern America had moved on. Earl Baker made a solemn promise to himself and to the town. He would keep the Baker Hotel running until his 70th birthday. If no buyer appeared by then, if no salvation arrived to rescue this grand old building, he would close its doors himself. True to his word, on April 30th, 1963, Earl Baker locked the entrance and walked away. The Baker Hotel had served mineral wells for 30 years, and now it stood silent. But the story wasn't quite over yet. In 1965, a group of local investors pooled their resources and purchased the hotel for $375,000. They believed they could restore the Baker to its former glory, could somehow recapture the magic that had once drawn visitors from across the country. For a brief moment, hope returned to mineral wells. Then, in 1967, Earl Baker paid what would be his final visit to the hotel he had managed for so long. He climbed to the Baker Suite, the grand rooms where he had spent so many years of his life. And there, on the floor of that cavernous space, he suffered a massive heart attack. Workers found his body the next morning. The man who had closed the hotel and watched it reopen had now added his own spirit to its growing collection. The Baker struggled on for a few more years, but Earl's death seemed to have broken something essential. In 1972, the doors closed for what seemed like the final time. The Baker Hotel entered decades of abandonment, its grand halls left to crumble while the ghosts of its past roamed freely through the darkness. The haunted years. For more than 4 decades, the Baker Hotel stood as a monument to decay. Its windows broke, letting in rain and wind that accelerated the destruction of its once elegant interiors. Vandals broke through barriers, stealing copper pipes and wiring, leaving graffiti on walls that had once been covered in the finest materials money could buy. Paint peeled from ceilings. Floors buckled and rotted. The Olympic-sized pool, that revolutionary amenity that had made the Baker famous, filled with stagnant water and debris. Nature began reclaiming what humans had abandoned. Weeds pushed through cracks in the concrete. Birds nested in the chandelier housings. Bats colonized the upper floors, their droppings accumulating in piles that made exploration hazardous. The elegant tilework cracked and crumbled. The wrought iron railings rusted and weakened. Every year brought new damage, new deterioration, new evidence that the Baker Hotel was slowly dying. Local teenagers sometimes dared each other to enter the building, telling stories of what they saw and heard within its walls. They spoke of strange sounds echoing through empty corridors, of cold spots that seemed to move with purpose, of shadows that flickered at the edge of vision and vanished when confronted directly. Some claimed to have seen the ghostly figure of a woman in white drifting through the 7th floor, her face twisted with eternal sorrow. Others reported hearing the screams of a young man coming from somewhere near the elevator shaft, cut short as suddenly as they began. The stories grew with each passing year, accumulating like the debris that filled the abandoned rooms. Some were certainly exaggerations or outright fabrications, the products of overactive imaginations, fueled by darkness and fear. But others came from sources too credible to dismiss. From police officers called to investigate break-ins who reported experiencing things they could not explain. From utility workers who entered the building for inspections and emerged pale and shaken, refusing to discuss what they had witnessed inside. During the 1980s and 90s, paranormal investigation teams began visiting the Baker Hotel with increasing frequency. They arrived with equipment designed to detect and record supernatural phenomena: electromagnetic field meters, infrared cameras, digital voice recorders capable of capturing sounds below the threshold of human hearing. What they found only deepened the mystery. Temperature readings in certain areas showed dramatic and inexplicable fluctuations. Cold spots 20 degrees below the ambient temperature would appear suddenly in rooms with no drafts or ventilation, then disappear just as mysteriously. Electronic equipment would malfunction in specific locations, functioning perfectly fine elsewhere in the building. Batteries drained at impossible rates, as though something was drawing energy from them. The audio recordings proved even more disturbing. Investigators captured what they called electronic voice phenomena, sounds and voices that had not been heard at the time of recording, but appeared clearly on playback. Some were whispers too faint to understand. Others were more distinct. Names, pleas for help, fragments of conversation between entities that seemed unaware of the living people around them. One recording, captured near the 7th floor suite where Virginia Brown had lived and died, contained what sounded like a woman softly crying, her sobs fading gradually into silence. Video recordings occasionally captured anomalies as well. Orbs of light, moving in ways that could not be explained by dust particles or insects, drifted through darkened hallways. In one famous clip, a shadowy figure appeared to move across a doorway in the background, while investigators focused on another area entirely. The figure was visible for only a few frames, but its human-like proportions were unmistakable. But even in ruin, the Baker Hotel was never truly empty. During these abandoned years, the hotel became legendary among paranormal investigators and thrill-seekers. Those who dared to enter its crumbling halls reported experiences that defied explanation. The smell of perfume would appear suddenly in rooms that had been empty for decades, the distinctive lavender scent associated with Virginia Brown's ghost. The odor of cigar smoke, matching the brand that T.B. Baker himself had favored, drifted through the corridors of the 11th floor, where he had kept his private suite. Some visitors reported hearing footsteps echoing through empty hallways, the rhythmic sound of shoes on bare floors, where no living person walked. Others claimed to see orbs of light floating through the darkness, moving with apparent purpose through spaces that should have been completely black. The elevator that had claimed Douglas Moore's life would occasionally seem to move on its own, its mechanisms groaning to life without any human hand at the controls. The most unnerving reports came from the basement area near the elevator shaft. Investigators with audio recording equipment claimed to capture the sound of screaming, the agonized voice of what they believed to be Douglas Moore, forever reliving his terrible final moments. Whether these recordings represent genuine paranormal activity or merely the sounds of an old building settling into its foundations, they added to the Bakers' growing reputation as one of the most haunted locations in all of Texas. Television crews from Ghost Adventures explored the Baker in December of 2012, documenting strange occurrences that seemed to defy rational explanation. Actor Eric Balfour shared his own experiences with the hotel on Celebrity Ghost Stories in 2010, and again on The Haunting of in 2016. The Baker Hotel had become famous once more, though now for reasons its builders never could have imagined. the scent of the unseen. What makes the Baker Hotel unique among haunted locations is not what visitors see, but what they smell. Mark Rawlings, who has overseen the restoration project for years, describes the phenomenon with the matter-of-fact tone of someone who has experienced it countless times. The perfume is the most common encounter. It appears suddenly, filling a room or corridor with the unmistakable scent of lavender, then vanishes just as quickly. There is no source, no bottle of perfume left behind, no rational explanation. Rawlings has witnessed television crews from the Travel Channel experience the scent firsthand, watching their faces change as they realize something unexplainable is happening around them. The cigar smoke is equally mysterious. It drifts through the 11th floor, where T.B. Baker once maintained his private quarters. The smell is rich and distinct, exactly the kind of quality tobacco a wealthy hotel magnate would have smoked in the 1930s. Yet no one has lit a cigar in the Baker Hotel for decades, and the ventilation systems have long since ceased to function. Perhaps strangest of all is the smell of laundry detergent that occasionally appears in the basement laundry room. News crews visiting the hotel have documented this phenomenon, noting that the scent is strong, fresh, and completely impossible. The laundry room hasn't been used in over 75 years. The hotel has been closed for more than 50, yet the smell appears, lingers for a few moments, then disappears as mysteriously as it came. Rawlings has developed his own theory about these olfactory hauntings. He believes that whatever spirits remain in the Baker Hotel are not malevolent. They are simply the echoes of people who loved this place in life and have chosen to remain connected to it after passing on. Maybe they're getting cleaned up, he has joked. Ready for the grand reopening? The restoration begins. For decades, plans to restore the Baker Hotel came and went like the Texas wind. Investors would express interest, then disappear when they realized the scope of the challenge. The building continued to decay, and many believed it would eventually collapse entirely, taking its ghosts and its memories with it. Then, in 2019, something changed. A group led by Dallas-Fort Worth-based investor Laird Fairchild announced they had secured funding to begin what would become one of the largest private restoration projects in Texas history. The budget was set at $65 million. The goal was nothing less than bringing the Baker Hotel back to life. The work began in late 2019, just months before a global pandemic would throw the hospitality industry into chaos. Despite the challenges, the restoration team pressed forward. They stabilized the structure, preventing further collapse. They restored all 997 original windows, a painstaking process that took nearly a year to complete entirely on-site. They removed tons of debris, uncovering architectural details that had been buried for decades under layers of damage and decay. In the cloud room on the 12th floor, workers demolished later additions that had obscured the original design, revealing the breathtaking ballroom space where guests had once danced among the clouds. In what has been dubbed the treasure room, restoration teams have carefully preserved every original element they could salvage. Chandeliers, moldings, doors, hardware that speaks to the craftsmanship of a bygone era. Mark Rawlings, who has worked on other legendary Texas hotel restorations, including Austin's Driscoll Hotel and San Antonio's St. Anthony, calls the Baker his favorite project. The place was done over the top for its day, he has said. They had some great craftsmen, so we're honored to be carrying on the tradition. What awaits? The restoration has faced numerous delays. The pandemic disrupted supply chains and investment patterns. Construction costs soared. Interest rates climbed, What was originally planned as a 2022 opening has been pushed back repeatedly, with current projections targeting 2028. The project requires securing additional funding, with a $25 million USDA-backed loan representing the final piece of the financial puzzle. When complete, the Baker Hotel will offer 165 guest rooms, substantially larger than the original 450 cramped spaces. The second floor will once again house a luxury mineral spa, allowing guests to experience the same healing waters that drew visitors more than a century ago. Modern amenities will blend with historic preservation, creating a space that honors the past while serving the present. But what of the spirits who have called the Baker home for so long? Restoration workers report that the paranormal activity has continued throughout the construction process. Some have speculated that the disturbance of renovation might agitate the ghosts, making them more active than they have been in years. Others believe the opposite, that the spirits are pleased to see their beloved hotel being restored to its former glory. Rawlings takes a philosophical view. They're just good people, now they're good ghosts, he has said. Why are you going to scare us off if we're here fixing up your house? He makes it a habit to knock on the door of the Baker suite before entering, a show of respect for whatever remains of Earl Baker's presence within those walls. The meaning of memory. Standing before the Baker Hotel today, one cannot help but feel the weight of history pressing down from those 14 stories of weathered stone. This building has witnessed the highest hopes and deepest despairs of thousands of human souls. It has hosted the famous and the forgotten, the desperate and the glamorous. It has seen death come for the young and the old, the expected and the sudden. The ghosts that remain, if indeed they remain at all, are not monsters to be feared. They are echoes of lives lived with passion and pain, with love and loss. Virginia Brown, forever searching for the acceptance she never found in life. Douglas Moore, a teenager cut down in a moment of playful recklessness. The sick who came seeking cures. The soldiers who came seeking one last taste of normalcy before war. T.B. Baker himself, the visionary who created this monument to human ambition. Earl Baker, who loved and lost and ultimately joined the spirits of his own creation. What makes the Baker Hotel truly haunting is not the spectral sightings or the mysterious smells. It is the reminder that all grand human endeavors eventually fall to time. The most luxurious resort becomes a crumbling ruin. The most famous names become footnotes in history books. The healing waters that once drew thousands now flow largely forgotten, their promises of miracles replaced by modern medicine. And yet something endures. The building still stands. The stories are still told. The ghosts, if they exist, still walk their endless circuits through corridors they knew in life. There is a kind of immortality in that, a persistence that defies the decay of the physical world, the future, and the past. When the Baker Hotel finally reopens its doors, it will offer modern travelers an experience unlike any other. They will sleep in rooms where celebrities once laid their heads. They will swim in waters that desperate souls once believed could cure any ailment. They will walk halls where the echoes of the past seem almost tangible, where the boundary between the living and the dead grows thin. Some will come seeking luxury, the boutique hotel experience in a building with genuine historic character. Others will come seeking ghosts, hoping to capture evidence of the paranormal activity that has made the Baker famous. Still others will come simply out of curiosity, wanting to see for themselves this monument to a different era of American history. Whatever draws them, they will become part of the Baker Hotel's continuing story. Their footsteps will join the countless others that have worn these floors. Their voices will add to the chorus that has filled these rooms for nearly a century. And perhaps in some small way, their presence will bring comfort to the spirits who have waited so long for the grand old building to come back to life. The final word. The Baker Hotel stands today as it has stood for nearly 100 years, its towers reaching toward the Texas sky, its foundations planted deep in the earth that gave birth to the miracle waters of mineral wells. It has survived the Great Depression, world wars, decades of abandonment, and the slow crumbling of everything that once made it great. Through every challenge, through every moment when demolition seemed not just possible but inevitable, the grand old building has persisted, as stubborn and enduring as the spirits that are said to walk its halls. It has witnessed love and loss, triumph and tragedy, the desperate hopes of the sick and the careless play of the young. It has been home to movie stars and outlaws, politicians and ordinary families seeking a taste of luxury they could not find elsewhere. And through it all, something has remained. Call them ghosts if you like, or call them memories made manifest. Call them the psychic residue of intense emotion, or simply call them stories that refuse to die. Whatever name you give them, they are the true inhabitants of the Baker Hotel, the permanent residents who never checked out. When you walk through those restored corridors someday, when you gaze out from the cloud room at the Texas landscape spreading to the horizon, when you smell a sudden hint of lavender perfume or cigar smoke with no earthly source, remember the lives that were lived here. Remember Virginia Brown and Douglas Moore. Remember the children who came seeking cures and the soldiers who came seeking peace. Remember T.B. Baker's impossible dream and Earl Baker's broken heart. Remember that every grand building is more than stone and steel. It is the vessel for human hopes, the container for human stories, the monument to human ambition that persists long after the builders have turned to dust. The Baker Hotel is haunted, yes. But perhaps all places that have truly mattered are haunted in their way, touched by the presence of all who came before, shaped by the joys and sorrows that soaked into their walls like the mineral water that once gave this small Texas town its reason for being. In the end, the ghosts of the Baker Hotel are not something to fear. They are something to honor. They are the proof that some stories are too powerful to ever truly end, that some dreams are too vivid to fade entirely, that some places become so deeply connected to human experience that they remain alive even in apparent death. The Baker Hotel still stands. Its doors will open again, and when they do, the living will walk once more among the dead, sharing space with those who loved this place enough to never leave it behind. That is the legacy of the Baker Hotel. That is the truth at the heart of Texas's most haunted mansion. The building may have crumbled, but the stories endure. The guests may have died, but their spirits remain. And as long as anyone remembers to tell the tale, the Baker Hotel will never truly be abandoned again.